Hi, I'm Sarah Wilder, and this is part 15 of Surviving the Man I Married. In part 14, we heard the first half of a lengthy reading with Peter from July 2020. In this episode, you'll hear the rest. I appreciate you being here and going the distance with me on this one. My mom stepped forward next. She kissed my forehead, gave me a big hug, and held my hand. She recounted some favorite memories of our time spent together in her kitchen, cooking or baking for big family get togethers and holidays. I'll note here that this house she lived in that I grew up in was built in 1858, a big old rusty, crusty Victorian, kind of on the edge of the city and the county. A lot of vineyards and stuff around us. It was really beautiful, but a big crusty house. But boy, did we whip up a lot of magic in that tiny little kitchen. She used this memory as a way to acknowledge my love for that stuff, but also to put into perspective how, in my current state, I need to give myself a break by setting more realistic expectations. For example, I need to let go of thinking that I should accomplish all my things every single day, but to take each day as it comes and not let cooking become a chore for me. Instead, choose one day a week to have fun in the kitchen by trying something new. This will raise my joy level, which in turn will elevate me overall. And I did love and enjoy those new appliances Jim bought. They were pretty nice. Small talk was over, and my dad stepped forward. He shook Peter's hand and he referenced that Peter has spoken about him in past readings regarding how his parenting negatively affected me, about his behavior, and how he used to be. Dad wanted me to know that he's very different on the other side. He's evolving, and our souls are not static. They're always growing and becoming more elevated, not only when we cross over and are only in the spirit world, but also while we're here in the physical world. My dad said he's now more approachable, softer, kinder, genuine, and very loving. That is a distant departure from the Colonel, I can tell you that. Dad said that he's been near me a lot lately and is familiar with my current struggles. He wanted to talk about something with me, but before he can, my higher self interceded to tell me I may have a memory block of this event as a trauma response to it. Dad continued, telling me I'm a beautiful woman, with or without wigs and makeup, and he knows I hide a part of myself. I conceal my true essence. He took accountability for causing that. That's a big one. That's big. When I was younger, he was uncomfortable with his weight and his appearance, and he projected that insecurity onto me and my mother by making hurtful remarks, which he now knows was wrong. He said that I was never overweight. I was an average sized child. He then transitioned into talking about human psychology and biology regarding the effect that early projection had on my future adult self and how that served to attract Jim to me because Jim is how my dad used to be and that he makes cruel remarks on my appearance and he contradicts himself in doing it. The contradiction comment Dad made, that stems from how Jim says, oh, he loves me, he cherishes me, wants to stay married to me and make it work, take care of me and stay together in old age. But then at times, Jim would hiss or spew a really cutting remark. And that happened usually when I was making an attempt to somehow improve myself, like applying for a job or having a wig and full makeup kind of day. Jim projected his own self-loathing onto me regularly. My higher self interjected that Jim's nitpicking on me, she was agreeing with my dad, is a projection of how he feels about himself. And he can't bear having that kind of vulnerability. It's like a weakness to him. So he, like my dad had done, puts it all onto me. My higher self also added that Jim did this strategically, seeking to create vulnerability in me and, in essence, purging it completely from himself. The object of doing that was to maintain the appearance of strength, something he was compelled to do, so that no one would cause harm or take advantage of him. She identified the kind of people who believe in tough love as those who are most likely to behave like this. They feed untrue ideas to others for their own gain and even for their enjoyment. Sick effing sadists. To rebuke the effect of Jim's emotional abuse, my higher self wanted me to heal how I feel about myself. She then challenged me to withhold using wigs and makeup for 3 weeks, just like my mom had done in the previous reading, during which time I'll feel withdrawal symptoms from putting those things down. A note here, I did say in a previous reading that I followed my mom's advice and put the wigs and makeup down thinking they'll attract Jim to me, and I did do that. But what didn't change was in my mind and my heart, I still had this false hope, this unrealistic, irrational expectation that he would at least not be embarrassed to be seen with me in public, or he might at least not think I'm like a troll, a bald, weird troll. And that is why Spirit is hammering the message home. My higher self is really laying it on me. This is hard, this next part, she says. And I think it's a hard thing for a lot of women victims of narcissistic abuse. The longer we've been with the narcissist, the harder this becomes because we sink low in our opinion of ourselves. My higher self then challenged me to look at myself in the mirror every single day, take notice of my beauty. She was telling me I have to go cold turkey from those artificial means of confidence, the wigs and the makeup. No problem, I thought. I got the message. Next, my higher self explained that this simple but vital practice will redirect my thought process, reprogram my brain, and I'll be better able to ignore any opposition to my self-esteem, such as Jim's hurtful remarks, which she reiterated stem from his own lack of self-esteem and that he doesn't even understand me. She said, I must come to understand that what I think of myself is most important. So at this juncture, I shared with Peter that I recognized the contradiction in Jim's behavior, the bad energy emanating from him, that I feel Jim is not attracted to me. I know it, and he feels guilty about that. And he overcompensates by using hyper-complimentary language, which is a dead giveaway. And within this reading, I come to realize all those moments have had a cumulative, corrosive effect on me. So here's where my mom steps in and briefly adds something about Jim. She said because of his training and experience as a police officer, 27 years he was a cop, he is able to keep his facial expressions and voice neutral, to take control of his body language. But Jim has no understanding of how people can still read his energy, despite his efforts to control his physical presence and suppress any indicators. She agreed that he does overcompensate and use compliments and says things he thinks I want to hear to allay my fears. But she revealed that I'm able to detect his inauthenticity. I want to note here that despite all the dysfunction in my body and my brain and my emotions and my psychology, at least my bullshit meter was intact. Probably because it didn't require batteries or going outside. My higher self then gave me some coaching on how to discern the intent of someone's words, whether they're from my own ego or a projection onto me from someone else. She said that with a genuine compliment, I can detect its authenticity by looking into the speaker's eyes, and I can feel their intent and emotion. With an insincere compliment, the speaker's eyes will appear hollow, and their words will feel empty with no emotion or engagement. So the question and answer portion started next, and first I expressed my dismay at realizing Jim has failed to uphold a major condition of our remarriage. Jim was supposed to be working on his corn addiction and his addiction to the associated behaviors. He had stopped reading the self-help books he'd bought on it. He was no longer going to the therapist he was seeing for that express purpose because he claimed she told him he was cured, which I never bought that story. And my higher self confirms that assumption by the therapist was based on a performance by Jim. And he quit going to the support group meetings. Any attempts I made to address these lapses with Jim were met with denial, gaslighting, and professions of his remission and his being cured. And then he disengaged entirely. The second question was, is Jim accessing corn and feeding his addictions? At this point, Jim's higher self stepped in and he fielded the inquiry, literally showing Peter a video of what Jim does when he's alone. And it's a resounding yes. Jim's higher self labeled lower Jim's urge to watch corn a fixation, describing the nature of the content he chooses as really inappropriate, very, very bad, unhealthy. And he explained there was a lot of negative energy generated by what Jim was watching and doing, especially so in his bedroom. My higher self popped in and offered that she's felt fragile over the concept of me leaving Jim because I'm at a crossroads. Stay and constantly be fed lies, watch his behavior remain unchanging, or leave and live a new life. After all, she said, he's very adept at lying and incredibly stubborn. She urged me to recognize that staying with Jim, enduring the lies, betrayal, and abuse is not taking real control of my life. It's denial, the D word. She presented to me what I'll win should I choose the familiar former, staying. I forfeit control over my life. I forfeit happiness and freedom. Taking the road most feared, the latter, leaving. I'll get away where he can't hurt me anymore. I'll restore my power, and I'll truly take control of my life. I told Peter how it felt to hear this kind of ultimatum because I have not been able to see a way out or envision being on my own. And that thinking about it makes me stressed out. I feel like I'm using a dim flashlight in a dark tunnel. And despite finally receiving a modest inheritance, I was so frustrated with and somewhat ashamed of myself for having chosen to spend it on the townhouse instead of myself, instead of my freedom, because I just couldn't see a plan that didn't end with me losing all that money with no job and potential difficulty paying for housing. I didn't want to leave and go through all that and then have to go back to asshole. My higher self responded to these thoughts and said, this is the reason why she's felt more fragile over my option to leave Jim, because she knows I'm not yet ready for it. The choice to leave can only come from within myself, and it's okay not to be ready. Also, she dropped that the reason I have been noticing that I've been in a fog, especially foggy lately, is because lots of feelings and emotion have been rising to the surface. She confirmed that now is a good time to leave him. More signs of his unwellness have been shown to me. He's unable to keep promises, too. And she clarified that these aren't new signs to me, that my heightened awareness has made them more obvious. And it's true. That's real. At times when I may doubt my judgment, she said, she prompted me to question myself. Can I see what others clearly see? She explained that I'm in the process of an awakening and I'm having many light bulb moments. I was told that both my parents have been working really hard to give me a lot of courage and strength to move forward with a plan to get out. My mom said that I'll be 10 times stronger on my own, without the negativity and oppression. And she addressed my suspicions about Jim's words and that sometimes I doubt them. And in support, she said that a lot of people, including all of my kids, can see right through Jim's behavior. They know when he's pretending. They hear his lies for what they are. It's not just in my head. I commented to Peter that in a few days, my daughter Becca and her family will be visiting for a week for my grandson's birthday. And I was worried that Jim's going to behave strangely and embarrassing and make everything awkward, ruin their stay. My mom said, of course, Jim will be Jim and behave exactly as expected. She sees that Jim knows he has weak bonds with his kids, that they can see his real intentions, and how he is disconnected from our family. To compensate for the disparity and attempt to bridge the gap, she said Jim performs. He overreacts to things, tries to make something humorous, but it's badly done. His remarks are random, inappropriate, and unwelcome. All that's true. And he was bizarre and stupid during the whole visit. But we enjoyed ourselves with each other right under his nose, as if he wasn't even there. I was allowed to ask another question, and I asked Peter if my fibromyalgia was caused by Jim. The answer, and this is the second time in this reading and the third time overall that I hear basically the same thing, so I'm not sure why I even bothered to ask, is an emphatic yes. My higher self explained how negative energy affects the body, that Jim brings home negative energy from work, as well as generating it at home through his actions, reiterating that what Jim is doing behind closed doors is very, very dark stuff. There it is, over and over, clear as day. Living under the same roof with this man is perpetuating my illness. Something I've consistently heard for the past 2 years, including a year earlier from the tarot reader. I stay there, I stay sick. I stay sick, I can't leave. I can't leave, I'm doomed to this cycle. So that's where the reading ends. You know, clearly I understand that leaving is the hardest step in freeing oneself from a toxic narcissist, and exponentially so when a woman has children to consider. My heart goes out to all of you, and especially so to you who are safeguarding children through these kinds of experiences and through the process of leaving. And anything in these readings that you resonate with, that it in any way will be helpful to you, take it upon yourself and run with it. Use this information that I'm getting from Spirit to help yourselves. Thank you for sticking with me. I appreciate your patience. In episode 16, I'll share after the reading stuff, and I'll fill you in on the second half of 2020. What a year that lockdown was for so many of us. If you want to know more, please remember to like, follow, and share to take my story one step closer to publication. And ladies, I invite you to step out of the darkness and into your power.